We're in the middle of chapter 18, where the Alter Rebbe is introducing a new path, which we refer to as the short, long way. The optimal path is the long, short way. Long because it takes a long time to master. Short because once it's mastered, it is almost effortless in its application. Long, short, long way is easier to get going, but a struggle to sustain and maintain. The short, long way, which we are talking about, is for the person who is, at least temporarily, if not always, struggling with maintaining their intellectual pursuit of the infinity of Hashem. So, whereas our highest recommendation is think it, feel it, do it, that is, engage your intellect. And again, when we say intellect, we do not mean your storehouse of data. We do not mean your raw IQ. We mean really your capacity for imagination, that there is something beyond myself, that it is not simply about my own personal experience and how everything is seen through that lens. To get over myself, that is the characteristic that we talk about when we use the word in this context of intellect or chachma, the willingness to go outside of myself. That's the chachma. That's the koach ma, the willingness to be amazed. Now, what about a person who doesn't have that either innate ability or they have not yet developed that ability? What should they do in the meantime to have a meaningful, profound relationship with Hashem? So the Alter Rebbe has here identified and alerted us to the intuitive, innate, natural desire to be associated with the infinity of Hashem, called the Ava, love, but not love like maybe it's my favorite thing I ever did, like I love swimming, but it is my desire to be aligned with Hashem that is indigenous to my existence. Why? How do we know? I don't like it. Why do I think everybody's going to like what I like? And our explanation is not because our experience is that we all enjoy it, that everybody likes this behavior. Rather, it is simply because every Jew has a chelik elokah mimal mamish, an actual investment of Hashem himself into our very existence. And just like a child intuitively loves their parent, and again, loves means I want to be associated therewith. May not be my favorite thing, doesn't mean that I enjoy it. It means I want to be connected with this. So too, every Jew, because of their chelek elokam imal mamish, their actual part of Hashem that is invested within their existence, wishes, longs, intuitively desires to be aligned with Hashem. That is Ava, the desire to be connected. Tivius, from the word Teva, it is natural, it is intuitive to our existence. Now, sometimes that love, like the love a person has for their own health, nobody wants to be sick. What happens? They dangle the potato chips in front of my eyes, and I come up with all kinds of explanations and rationales and justifications for concealing my natural intuitive desire for being in alignment with my natural health. And I can cloud it and clutter it and corrode it with unhealthy behaviors to the point that that natural love, Ava Tivius, becomes an Ava, the same love, but it is now misuteres. It is hidden. It becomes hidden. It's so lost, I forgot all about it. So what am I to do? I have to reawaken it. I have to identify it and reawaken it. So as Chassidus often does, we're going to make an academic study of something that on the surface might not appear predisposed to an academic study. That is, we're going to do a study as to how we can activate our innate desire for alignment with Hashem. That's what we are. That's what we have to do. That's how we're going to do it. So, the Alter Rebbe, when we last left, which is the Chitas for the 8th of Shvat on the leap year cycle, so about 10 lines down in the original text of the chapter 18. The Alter Rebbe is going to ask 4 questions to get us into a analysis and a granular understanding of this love, with the hopes that once we understand it, we can activate it. The more we understand it, the more we can bring it to the fore. And we asked, what is the source of this love? What is its shorish? Now, the word shorish translates as a root, like the root of a tree. And this is a little bit of a directive towards the answer that just like apple seeds produce apple trees, which produce apples, there is a root there that produces something in alliance with its root. And the answer there is going to be, as the Alter Rebbe mentions here, our biological ancestors, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Then we ask, what is the character of this love? Because when we use the word love, and it may feel a little too scientific to be so analytical about something so amorphous as love, and yet we understand this ourselves. Certainly, when a person says, I love my family, I love my country, I love the springtime, they don't mean the same thing in each one of those. Each one of those is a little different. Each of those loves are a little different. So, what is the character of the love of Hashem? We say in the davening from Chumash, you should love the Lord your God. Well, what does that mean to love God? What a love is a yearning for something. So at the most simplistic level, when a person says, I love chocolate, they mean they want to eat chocolate. When they say they love their country, when they say they love their family, they mean something different. So what do we mean when we are talking about this idea that I love Hashem? What is the character of this love? These two questions will be answered in this chapter. There are two more questions which we will answer only in the next chapter, which is, how are we, quote unquote, so sure? What do we mean when we say that this love is indigenous? It's part of the standard equipment of the Jewish soul. How did it wind up being imprinted upon our identity? And then another characteristic, which is, how is there yira, a sense of awe and reverence and distance that is intertwined in this love? How does that fit in? Now, those last two questions will be answered only in the next chapter. But in our chapter, we're going to ask, what is the source, the root, and that word root is important. Again, the botanical analogy of this love, and what is the objective of this love? What does it yearn for? So here we go. Va'inyan, the point being, and again, we're in chapter 18, we're about 10 or 12 lines down. It's the chitas for the 8th of Shvat for the leap year. So we start to explain. Va'inyan, the point being, Kia avos, our avos. Now, when we refer to them, of course, as our avos, and lahavdil, we say, George Washington is the father of our country. Now, in that context, George Washington, we don't, of course, mean that he is the biological ancestor. We mean he is the founder of our country. But when we say that our avos, we mean that much more literally, that they are avos, and as again, my analogy with the tree, avos beget toldos, fathers beget sons, and just like in the biological realm, a child reflects the parent. They have their DNA, they have their eye color, they have their sense of humor, they have their tics and character traits. In a similar manner, the Jews have the reflection, or they reflect the character of their ancestors, of their avos. So it's not just that they were the ones who came up with this idea, but that there is a biological alignment that is associated therewith. Now, we know this, again, in our own experience in the most obvious sense, but there's also a quality that a person can be closer with the teacher than with the parent, but they do not physically resemble the teacher, whereas they physically, when I included within physically is their biology, they reflect their parent. Well, this is what happens, that the Jews' physical descendancy, the fact that we are descendants of our avos, incorporates a spiritual character. It is embedded therein. And we know this in the most obvious way, that a person's Jewish identity is biological. It comes from the fact that their mother is Jewish. And just to illustrate this point, even according to those who mistakenly want to represent that it's not just if your mother is Jewish, it's also even if your father is Jewish, they're acknowledging that there's a biological component, meaning we don't think, well, since your father is, I don't know, a conservative, you're going to be conservative or liberal. We don't think there's a biological element to that. There may be a nurture element to it, but there's not a nature element to it. And in this idea of our neshama, there is a nature element to it, not just a nurture element, as we will see. So here we go. It says, they were a Merkava. Now, the word Merkava means a chariot. And the analogy of a chariot is that just as a chariot is simply a tool of its driver, it has no independent agenda. It simply does whatever it's hired to do. Similarly, our avos reached such a surrender of self that they similarly have no identity of their own. Their guf, their body, their biology became absolutely surrendered to as a tool to their neshama. Whereas with the common person, even maybe at the level of tzaddik, there's going to be some friction between body and soul, because even the tzaddik still has a body that has potentially a pushback against the neshama. But our avos were so aligned, their bodies so surrendered to their soul, that it literally made a biological imprint upon their identity. Now, lahavdil, and again, it doesn't say this in the Tanya, but just to use it, there is a theory, even in secular psychology, that there can be, I think the term is generational trauma. That is, because your great-grandfather was scared off by a pterodactyl, so you have a fear of lizards or whatever it might be. I mean, you never met this great-great-grandfather. You live in a completely different circumstance than he does. But it's so imprinted upon his biology that this was passed on to his children. So they're recognizing, again, a similar concept. And of course, our ancestors were at Sinai and saw Hashem. Our ancestors spoke with God, etc. And this so impacted them that it was literally passed on genetically from parent to child. And here we go. Ve'al kain, and therefore, zachu, they merited, not just like it's a reward, but again, using this analogy, whether it's accurate or not, it's not, we don't want to harp on that, this generational trauma, that's something that happened generations ago, so impacted the genetics of that player that it was passed on eternally to their descendants. So that's what we mean. Our ancestors had the purification, the word zachu, which commonly is translated as merit, like it's a reward. It means here something additional from the word zach. Zach means clear, like glass. The Hebrew word for glass is based on that. It's got a clarity to it that is passed on, lahamshich, to bring down, nefesh, ruach, neshama. We'll talk about this in a moment. To bring down this level to livnehem, to their children, acharehem, afterwards, ad olam, forever. And I'm going to come back to this, but I just want to get the terminology here. To every single one. Well, what about me? I'm not so spiritual. I don't feel. Again, just like a parent has multiple children, and each child reflects the parent. One looks just like his mother. It's unmistakable. This one exactly has his father's mannerisms. This child has the same eye color and hair color. And that child less so. They almost look like they're less part of the family, but they are absolutely. They don't have their parents' wit. They don't have their mother's, I don't know, grace, whatever it is. They are still 100% that child. So the Alter Rebbe makes the point, because, of course, everybody said, well, it must have run out after a certain point. I mean, it doesn't affect me. I don't sense that, right? I don't. That ava, that intuitive desire to be aligned with the infinity of Hashem, which is tivius, which is natural, has become misuteres. It's become concealed. It's become lost under a pile of Mishigas that has distracted me from it. But it is absolutely there. And again, we're going to come back to these words, this Nefesh Ruach Neshama idea. I want to come back to it, but I just want to get some data here, and then we'll come back. Mi'eser Sfiras de Kedusha, from the 10 spheros of holiness, and again, hopefully these words are at least a little familiar, if not the nuanced detail, which we'll come back to. Sheba'ar ba'olemes, of the 4 worlds, Atzilus, Bri, Yetzira, Asiya, l'chol echad v'echad, to each single one, and here the Alter Rebbe puts it in real emphatic, kifi madregosai, according to his level, ukifi maisav, and according to his deeds, v'al kol panim, and at least afil l'kal shabakalu Peish Yisrael, even the guy who is the most easily persuaded to do bad things, he's such a lightweight that he has no staying power. He's neglectful. He's deliberately neglectful, because each guy is saying, well, this doesn't mean me. I'm not that guy. Nimshach bizivugam. It is drawn down through the biology. Nefesh to malchus dasiya. Again, we're going to come back to all of these technical words. I know it's a lot of lingo, but we'll come back and try to walk through each one. The nefesh level of malchus dasiya, which at this point we're just going to leave it as, and we'll come back to the lowest, the least sensitive quality, sensitive to godliness quality. Shehi madrega hatachtoina, it's the lowest level. Shebegdusha asiya, of kedusha in the world of asiya. I know it's a lot of data, but for this point, it's just the least. The alpha PK, nevertheless, miyachashim eser spheres kedushas, since it is one of the 10 spheres, even if it's the lowest. He kulula mikulan, it is still linked to all of them. Gam chacham dasi, even to the chachma level. I know it's a lot of data here. I get it. Shebeseichim ubeshes chachma the malchus datzilis, in which you have the chachma of the malchus of atzilis. Shebeseicha chachma datzilis, which is the chachma of atzilis. Shabam meir orin baruch hu mamish, in which the infinite light of Hashem shines. Okay, I know it's a lot of data. Let's back up and walk it through every single step. So we are understanding or going forward with the idea that Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov came along and saved the day. That is, as we know, it's the parshas that we're reading now. 10 generations into creation, and Hashem says, this is not working out. He destroys the whole world. 10 more generations go by after Noach, and it's still not working out very well. And Hashem is ready to destroy the world again, as it says in Pirkei Avos. And along comes Avram, and of course later Abraham, and he shows Hashem, wait, there is hope here. We can get this right. And Avram goes through the 10 tests to elevate his absolute awareness with Hashem, all beginning, again, it happens to be this week's Parsha very nicely, that Hashem says, I want you to leave everything that is yours, your land, your upbringing, your parents, everything that begins with this is what I like, this is what's meaningful to me, this is what I think is a good idea. And I want you to go to the passion that God will show you. So not just that I want you to be compliant, I want you to be alliant. And as we constantly emphasize, this is that message of all of Tanya. We're not just here for compliance, we're here for alliance. We're here for surrendering not just the actions, but even the passion. So I'm not doing it because I want to do it, because I think it's a good idea, because it works for me, because it's meaningful for me. We have surrendered what I want as an individual to become what Hashem wants. And as such, God says, for example, that you, Abraham, will be the source of blessing. How can Abraham be the source of blessing? Don't blessings come from Hashem? Well, they pass through Abraham. They pass through him. And again, we refer to them as avos, fathers. And it's not just a metaphor, it's a literal message. They are the fathers, that is, they pass on genetically. And of course, all the things about Abraham, up to the point that he even goes against his intuitive desire to be kind and brings his son up for the slaughter. And again, and Yaakov, all of the stories that we know, so that our avos are completely spiritual entities expressed through the body. The body becomes a exclusively a tool for the expression of the infinity of Hashem. It is not in conflict or in friction at all with the infinity of Hashem. It is exclusively a mechanism for the expression of the infinity of godliness. And this so genetically impacts him that it makes it all the way down to us. Now, remember the audience of Tanya. There are people coming to the Alter Rebbe, and they're not disagreeing, they're just not feeling it. And as we pointed out in the last chapter, the Alter Rebbe acknowledges this. Our experience suggests otherwise. You're telling me that it's within my natural set to be aligned with Hashem, and our experience suggests otherwise. So right away, the Alter Rebbe anticipates all of the resistance. Well, this is only once upon a time when you were literally the children. Answer, no, this is forever, right? The Alter Rebbe makes that point. Well, this is a conceptual idea, sort of like the difference between emunah and bitachon. Emunah means I believe that God exists. Bitachon means I trust that Hashem will take care of me. So if a person says, I know I shouldn't, but I do it anyway, because otherwise I'm going to die, they're saying, I believe, but I don't trust. I don't trust that Hashem will provide me a parnasa if I'm honest. I don't trust that Hashem will provide me a parnasa if I am compliant and don't work on Shabbos. I believe in God. I know God doesn't want me to work on Shabbos, but I, quote, have to work on Shabbos because otherwise I won't make a parnasa. So I have emunah, but I don't have bitachon. I don't trust that Hashem will take care of me. So we might say, yes, that's the quality that our ancestors bequeathed to us, that we affirm God's existence. So the Alter Rebbe counters that, and he says, it even affects your nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Now, these three vocabulary words are ones we've encountered before, but, click here for more information. So what is that reference to? We talk about the neshama rather amorphously. We talk about I have a soul, some sort of spiritual awareness, some sort of intuitive sense of godliness, all correct, but limited. When we talk about this idea that we refer to again in its entirety as a neshama, we can actually break it down into 5 characteristics and further break those down into groups of 3 and 2. The 3, which are referenced here, are known by the acronym NARAN, Nun Resh Nun, which is an acronym for Nefesh. Nefesh means I exist. A rock exists. If there's a rock, there's got to be a rock maker. This is an innate premise that no thing can create itself. So if there's a rock, there's got to be a rock maker. So the rock is sustained by Hashem. And we can infer the presence of God from the rock. That is a nefesh level. In our human existence, that is what we do. Even though what we do, we shake the lulav, we eat the matzah, doesn't always seem incredibly spiritually transformative and beguiling, yet we understand and we know that this is the activation of the infinity of Hashem. We have activated the infinity of Hashem through our activity. Ruach means, they translate as spirit or whatever it is, but it means our character. We sometimes call it emotion, but emotion sounds like shallow. Someone's emotional and they become hysterical over everything. It means the love, the reverence, that characteristic of ourselves. An animal can have that. An animal can be playful, it can be scared, it can be aggressive, it can be passive. And then we get to the distinctive quality of the human being in the story of creation, that God blew into his nostrils nishmas chaim, the neshama, which the word literally means breath of life. And that is the distinctive human ability to engage with intellect to master my character. So, of course, I'm not going to lecture an animal why they shouldn't do something that I don't like. I wouldn't anticipate that would have any value. But I can expect a human being to comprehend that their behavior needs to be modified, even their character needs to be modified. Those 3 aspects, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, are our human experience of our divine presence. Then we have 2 other levels, which we don't talk about here, and we'll explain why in a moment. One is chaya, life, what I live for. Now we think, oh, we're blessed. We live for, I don't know, parades or indulgences, but it is the passion to be alive. And we argue that our greatest passion, even more than our biological life, is to be aligned with the infinity of Hashem. So that is not something within my human structure. It's outside of my humanity. That's why a person, even if they are not passionately aligned with their godliness, would even be willing to go to total Mesiras Nefesh, literally to their death, rather than even to verbally disavow their alliance with Hashem. And this is a concept that Tanya will visit and revisit many, many times. Because what we would hope to do is activate that. The story I've told you 30 times about the guy who was interfered with somebody who was trying to stop us from at the mitzvah tank, and they were ready to get into a fist fight. And then when I said, thank you, we want to put on tefillin, he said no. Why? Because in that moment, his chaya was activated. And then there is another distinctive level called yechida, where simply I'm one with Hashem. It's not about me and I love God. I have no identity of my own. I'm purely love Hashem. Now, at the chaya and yechida level, it's a little easier, at least conceptually, to acknowledge, yes, I love God. And again, same thing. I'm not very religious, but if I heard somebody say something anti-Semitic, I would punch him in the nose, even if I go to jail. You're willing to go to jail for 5 years. Are you willing to put on tefillin? Well, no, I'm willing at my chaya level. I'm willing at my yechida level, but he's not willing at his nefesh level. So we might think, okay, you're telling me that the Avos bequeath to us this concept that we love Hashem at some abstract level of great moment of drama at Yechida and Chaya level. Okay, I can acknowledge that. What is harder to acknowledge is that it has penetrated all the way down to my nefesh, what I do, my ruach, what I want, and my neshama, what I think. And this is what the Alter Rebbe is disabusing us of that mistaken understanding. So again, back in the text, the Alter Rebbe says, back in where we started today, they brought it down, the nefesh, ruach, and neshama to their children forever. And it comes from the highest level. And again, you recognize these terms, I hope, of spherois, which are identifiable characteristics, the oilamos, the worlds, which are not planets or locales, but they are states of awareness. The most profoundly godly aware state is called Atzilus. I am next to God. Then there is Bria, I'm created by God. Then there is Yetzira, I am formed and like a piece of art from the artist that is God. And then there is Asiya, which is I'm busy. What about God? Oh yeah, him too. So the three more profound, we call higher, meaning more aware levels, are about God and then me. And the fourth level is about me. And God, oh yeah, I have to make an effort to think about God. God is not the obvious and the immediate. And this is true of every single person. Oh, not me, Rabbi. I mean, that's not me. That's where they're coming to the Alter Rebbe. It's not me. It's each person at his level. I mean, you can't expect me to be Abraham, right? And then each person according to his activity. Well, what are you doing about it? It's the classic thing. Can you persuade me that God exists? Well, what have you done already? What books have you read? Well, I haven't read anything. What do you mean? I want you to. Well, if you're not willing to put in any effort, it's not unreasonable that you're not having much experience of it. I read 10 books about exercise, but I haven't done any exercise. So what are you willing to do about it? So then the guy says, well, not me. Maybe that's true of you, and maybe that's true of, scholars and holy people, and it's just not me. It just doesn't, it just doesn't speak to me. I have a very desensitized soul. My soul is not so holy. It's not for me. So the Alter Rebbe disabuses him of that too. Even if you are the least, that is, when we say least, we don't mean in a stature. We mean you are the most easily persuaded. You're the lightest of lightweights. You have no stamina. You're the kal shebakalim, the one who is most easily dissuaded. And you're the most rebellious. Even so, it's not because of something you did or didn't do. It is drawn down to you biologically. Even if you think that you got a neshama, and yes, we acknowledge that neshamas have personality. the whole first 16 chapters of Tanya are you can't be just anything you want to be. You have a certain character to it. You can't be taller. You can't be left-handed. You are the way you have certain characteristics that are innate biologically, physiologically, and spiritually. You have a spiritual personality. And even if you say, well, my spiritual personality comes from the least sensitive, the fourth world, that is the world that is totally self-absorbed. I'm just extraordinarily self-absorbed. And in the spheroids, I have the most expressed, least personalized, least intense, which is called the Malchus level, which is the expressive, it's external of Asiya. So this is not for me. Answer, well, your neshama has come through this whole processing sequence. And even if you're right, because somebody's got to have the lowest neshama, and you are absolutely the most unlucky person ever, because somebody's got to be that. And you are the least spiritually sensitive person ever, because someone's got to be that. The biology of it is the same. There's 5 kids in the family. Everyone else knows all the other kids are just like our parents. They have their mannerisms, their eye color, their hair color. Everybody looks at them and says, oh, you must be so-and-so's child. They are the spitting image of them. And I'm the runt of the litter. I don't look like them. I don't act like them. But are you them? Yes. And again, we know your biology is absolutely them. We got to look under the hood. Your DNA is absolutely their DNA. Even if you don't behave like them, you don't align with them, you don't think like them, you are completely and totally isolated from them. That is your biological reality. That is your spiritual reality. Because from that lowest level, like the itsy bitsy spider, it follows up all the way through to the most profound infinite level. Just like the child is absolutely one with the parent, even if, again, they don't behave the same, they don't like the same things, they don't do the same things, they don't have any of that kind of relationship. Again, in context here, it's a neshama that comes from Malchus of Asiya, the least personal, the least sensitive, is tied in to the most personal, the most sensitive level. So, again, remember that when the Alter Rebbe and the Hasidus taught the world that even if you're not a scholar, you can have a relationship with Hashem, and you may be able to have a superior relationship with Hashem. There were some scholars who were offended by that, and then there were some people like this who also didn't like it, because there goes my excuse. I had the perfectly good excuse. It's not for me. I'm not a spiritually sensitive guy. I'm just a guy who sits on the quiet. I'm a quiet guy. I'm not. Well, tough noogies. It's all hands on deck. You're there. Even if you think, well, it's not for me. You expect me to do this. Yeah, you, everybody, right? Everybody's got to participate, even if you think you can't. Oh, how do you know that? You made that up. You think so. Sure, you're a rabbi. So rabbis think that everybody should be like rabbis. And just like the guy who plays the piano and says, I play the piano, why don't you play the piano? I speak French, why don't you speak French? I run fast, why don't you run fast? I sing beautifully, why don't you sing beautifully? I can do it, you can do it. Don't tell me you can't do it, I did it. So that's everybody's saying the same thing. Of course, Alter Rebbe says this because this is his experience. He thinks about godliness, he has this. What does he know about me? What does he understand about my spiritual character? I don't believe you that I can also access this, which I kind of like, because then I'm off the hook, right? Because then you don't expect it from me. So here the Alter Rebbe pushes back, and he starts to explain how we know that to be the case. How do we know that that is in fact true? Meaning, we thought everyone's going to be excited about finding out that that's true. And hopefully many are, but some are not, because boom, there goes my excuse for mediocrity. Now I can't. I used to have a great excuse. You know, again, remember the first Sikha from our Rebbe, 1951. We are not, you have to do it yourself. Don't tell me how great your Rebbe is. You have to do it. You don't get to say we won the World Series. You got to do it. No, we're not looking for fans. So how do you know this, Alter Rebbe? So he continues and he says, Kidduchsiv, it's a pasuk. The pasuk says, Hashem b'chachma yisid aretz. Another pasuk, b'kulam b'chachma sisa. These are two psukim. The first one that says that Hashem, through chachma, that's the key word which we're going to come back to, founded the earth. That's from Proverbs, King Solomon. And another one from King David, Tehillim, that all things with chachma were made. Now, again, the word chacham here, which we translate as wisdom, is not about how smart you are. It's not about how many pages of Torah you've studied. It is about a character trait. Chachma is the willingness to learn something new. Now, my favorite illustration of this is language. You take a kid, they grow up in a house, they speak 3 languages. The kid speaks 3 languages flawlessly. You take an adult who's got a more developed intellect, who's got greater wisdom and life experience, and they wind up speaking Hebrew like I speak Hebrew, which is basically, Slicha, anyone here speak English? Now, why is that? Why is it that a kid grows up, they're a little kid, they speak Hebrew, English, and Spanish, and they know when to speak Hebrew, when to speak English? How do they know that? Why? Because they have chachma. Not that they have genius. They are willing to learn. Because I don't want to learn. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's over harsh. It's uncomfortable to learn. I know what this is. It's a table. Just tell me what it is in Hebrew, which, of course, not the way you learn to speak a language. So what I know gets in the way of my chachma. Am I willing to be amazed by something outside of myself? Am I willing, do I have the bittul, the surrender, the koach ma, to say, I don't know? It's hard because I don't like feeling stupid. So chachma is the willingness to imagine the infinity of Hashem. The alternative to chachma is, this is who I am, this is how I do it, this is what I do, this is me, this is my personality, this is what works for me, this is what's meaningful to me. It begins with me. So Hashem tells us, the pasuk tells us, that Hashem, the infinity of Hashem, with that chachma is in the earth. So again, the concept of non-literal tzimtzum, which is the core of everything in Chassidus, that God is in this room. God himself is the room. Me, you, the book, the table is God. How do I access that? Well, Hashem embedded chachma, which is the most personal of characteristics, the infinity of Hashem, in the land. Now, the land, of course, means that which is most tangible, most seemingly ungodly. It doesn't have mobility. It doesn't even have signs of life. So it's not as aware as God, as an animal or a rock. A rock is not as aware of God as or demonstrative of God as an animal, which at least has life, or a plant. And we're saying that the infinity of Hashem, that chachma, is in this physical world. So even though I am the lowest soul, the most crass soul, I don't have this, it's there. And again, the second pasuk, that everything has this chachma quality embedded in it. And again, chachma is not about genius. It's about the willingness to go beyond myself, to get over myself. So again, it's the parsha, the beginning of our people is Hashem says, leave that land and go to the land that I will show you. And again, why is it about land? What is it about soil? Well, it is that even the soil, which does not bespeak godliness, it doesn't grow like a plant. It's not mobile and alive like an animal. It doesn't have data like a human. It doesn't have obedience like an angel. It is embedded with the infinity of Hashem. Even though I feel like I'm low, I'm dirt, I'm nobody, that infinity of Hashem is embedded within me. So no excuses. Now, what do I have to do? I have to unearth it, just like I have to unearth my natural health and so on. The Nimsa turns out, Ki ein soif baruch hu, the infinity of Hashem, melubash bebechinas chachma shebenefesh adam, yeh mi sheyeh, mi Yisrael, is embedded within the chachma of a person, no matter who he is. No excuses. Nobody can say, well, not me. Yes, everybody. It is embedded within every person. So, whoops, there goes that excuse. It is embedded within the person. Why? Because he's a Jew, not because he does Jewish things, even if he doesn't go to shul, even if he doesn't consciously do mitzvahs. It's not. It's again just like the child is the parent, even if they were adopted and they were raised by somebody else's parents, and they never talk to their parents, and they don't like their parents. Their biology is their parent, and that's unchangeable, unshakable. That is who they are. So too, every Jew, even if he doesn't like Jewish things, but what is my whole story? This is his identity. This chachma im orin seif baruch hu hamalubish ba, which again, chachma is not genius. It's the willingness to look up and see the infinite, and not just say, "Well, we don't do it that way. That's not how we do it. I don't like that. It's uncomfortable," and so on. Chachma is uncomfortable. It's disruptive. It's not immediately satisfying. Like trying to remember something, trying to figure something out can be irritating. Imagine everybody's had that experience. So what do? One of two things. One is we say, well, forget it, who cares? Or we keep pursuing it and pursuing. We may never get there. And it may forever be this irritant. Why? What's the irritant? Because the animal soul just wants everything to be the way it is. I don't want to be disturbed. I don't want to be disequilibrated. I just want to be. The animal soul just wants to sit like the lion in the zoo. It just wants to sit there forever. It has no aspiration for anything other than what's staring it in the face. And so Chachma is disruptive in that sense. It is disturbing of the person. Why? That's the infinity of Hashem that's embedded there. And when a person says, I want to feel close to Hashem, well, embrace it. Mispashetes b'chol b'chinas the nefesh kul achiyosim b'chinas roisha b'chinas ragla. And that level of Chachma, just like the brain operates the body, just like the brain dispatches the brain waves to the entirety of the person, just like the Chachma is embedded in the brain, and we'll talk about why that is. Why is that the meeting point between the finite and the infinite? We've established it based on the psuk, and then we'll try to have some rational understanding. And that animates the entire person, just like the brain waves animate the person. Whatever the biology is of the nervous system, it's not our topic, but the brain animates the hands and the feet. Well, the spiritual sense of the presence of the infinity of Hashem within our humanity animates every aspect of our existence, if we let it. But if, God forbid, there's blockage, then it doesn't operate. From head to toe, Kedisilik says, a chachma tichya baleha, that the chachma gives life to that which holds it. And again, chachma is not about information. It's about this character. It gives it this enthusiasm. So here's an irony, right? The whole purpose of this chapter is for the person who is daitoik tzara, his intellect is limited. He hasn't been able to manifest, think it, feel it, do it, which is the long, short way. And we're saying to the guy, hey, what can he do in the short term to get this going? And our pushback answer is, well, he can engage his intellect, not his data, but his willingness to go outside of himself, his absolute imagination, that there's something other than me, that it is not about me. And that becomes the point of entry into his humanity that gives enthusiasm and vibrancy to every aspect of his existence. And in the bracket, and again, the Alter Rebbe continuously pushing back against the guy who says, well, not me. You don't understand me. You're a rabbi. You think everyone can play the piano because you can play the piano. I come from the worst. Well, sometimes the worst people produce the greatest neshamas, right? Rivka Imenu came from some really bad people. And she had this great lofty neshama that gets embedded into that body, into that circumstance, in the mechanism to exhume it all. Hine hachachmi makar aseichel v'havana. Milamayla ma'abina shu abanas aseichel v'asagos. V'chachmi lamayla ma'avana v'asaga. V'makar lehen. V'zeu lashon chachma koyachma. So here the Alter Rebbe summarizes this point that I have been emphasizing the whole time, that Chachma is not about intelligence. It's not about how many pages of Torah I've mastered. It's not about my IQ. It's not about what a genius I am, how I can figure out puzzles. It is aloof, higher, not better, but it is more ephemeral, more ethereal, more infinite than analysis and grasping and wisdom. It's higher than all of that, but it's the source of that. What is it that I'm willing to imagine? What is it that I'm willing to allow into my thoughts? Now, as we know, and we'll see it develop later on, sometimes stupid things come in there, right? Meaning when we say, okay, I'm open to any and all ideas, some ideas are FedEx and some ideas are Coke too. There's a dated reference. Some ideas are, but if I say, no, well, that's not how we did it, the pushback, the enemy of Chachma is, well, that's not how we've done it. That's not how we do it. That's not how we do it. Which, of course, if we said that, we'd still be living in caves. Because that's not how we do it. That's not how we do it. We got to stop at that's not how we do it. We got to be receptive to the infinity, to leave Mitzrayim. And as we know, it's hard to lech lecha. It's hard to leave Mitzrayim. It's hard to leave the ark. It's hard to leave the wilderness. So we're coming to the Alter Rebbe. We made this effort. And we said, I don't feel it. Says, well, open yourself up. Well, we get a little resistant to that because it's discomforting to be opened up to some wild new concept, right? It's hard to start thinking about something completely differently. It's like being plucked and plopped into a foreign country, right? Crazy people move to Israel when they don't have any family or they don't speak the language. Are you crazy, right? That's Chachma. That's leaving Mitzrayim. That's lech lecha. It's hard. It's really hard. And that's how you become receptive to the infinity of Hashem. So again, the guy's coming to the Alter Rebbe and saying, I'm not feeling it. And the guy thinks, well, I don't qualify. I don't qualify. I'm not entitled to it. I have no right to think that I can because I'm a bad guy, because my parents were imperfect, because my neshama is crass. And the Alter Rebbe is saying, it's there. I'm like, well, again, what do you need? You need koach man. That's what the Alter Rebbe says here. It is the source that, yes, then we have to master it. We have to winnow it out. Again, we're not saying chachma and that's it. The chachma is the point of entry of the infinity, and then we have to work to grasp it, master it, and implement it. But that's step one. And that's why the infinite light is there. Meaning, what is it that makes Chachma the receptacle for the infinity of Hashem? So whenever you try to blend two different entities, certainly if they're two opposite entities, you have to find a common ground. You have to find something. Again, you can dilute them both. And that is the classic literal understanding of Tzimtzum, that we dilute both. God is diluted in this world. And where do you find God when you dilute your humanity? Again, this is the concept of Tzimtzum, which you hopefully recognize. So the literal concept, which is not the way Chassidus understands it, is that God can fit into this world when he's diluted. He's not so infinite in this world. He's not even in this world. And how do we align ourselves with God? Stop being so human. Stop being so rigid. Stop being so orderly. Stop being so physical. So that would argue that Yom Kippur is when we become close to God. Because in Yom Kippur, we're not so human. We don't eat, we don't drink, we're not showering. We're not doing human things. We're not being social. We're not thinking about our humanity. And where do we find godliness? When God is not so overwhelming. But Chassidus comes along, and you'll all recognize this, and says, you find Hashem on Purim, right? Yom HaKippurim, the day that's like Purim. When we eat and drink. What do you mean? We're being so human. How can we find God when we were being so human? And our emphasis is because the infinity of Hashem is not limited to the infinite. It is found within the finite in an even more profound manner. That's the concept of Tzimtzum manifesting itself through Chachma all the way down. So we don't only find Hashem, or we would argue we don't even primarily find Hashem in our non-human behaviors when we reach outside of our humanity. That's not where we're likely to find the infinity of Hashem. We find the infinity of Hashem when we combine our most human behavior, because otherwise we're saying, well, God doesn't really exist in eating, or he exists peripherally. It's got to be kosher, and you got to make a bracha. But in the actual moment that I'm eating it, well, God's not really there. That's why I find God in Yom Kippur. That's the argument. And again, that is an argument that is made in the Torah world. I'm not talking about people who are foolish. They're saying you're not going to find God in gardening. You're not going to find, you find it in a remote way. Yes, that since I go to work, therefore I earn money, therefore I can do mitzvahs, that's when I'll find God. But God is not in the work itself. He's there in the periphery. And the point of Chassidus is, not only you can also find God there, that's the superior founding of God. That's the Chachma in the Aretz. That's the infinite in the finite. Now, where is this meeting point? In Chachma. Why is Chachma the portal of entry? Why is that the first touch point? So again, in order to connect the two opposites, you have to find something of a common ground. Chachma is, I'll use this word, comfortable for Hashem because it's not rigidly defined. And the most basic element of Hashem is that you can't define him. God cannot be defined. So when we talk about the Chachma of Hashem, we talk about Chachma, Hashem is, I'm using this word, comfortable in Chachma because it is not, restraining. It's not rigid. Why are we comfortable with Chachma if it's so infinite? Because it's still within the realm of something in the human. Imagination is still within the realm of my human. I'm thinking of something, but it's still based on other things. It doesn't require a complete transmission or transgression of my identity. That's what makes it a meeting point from the infinite to the finite. So here the Alter Rebbe continues and he says, that's why the infinite light of Hashem is, and I'm using this word, comfortable in Chachma. Because God's number one rule, you can't get him. Nothing can master God. When I start off trying to play the guitar is the master. If I become a guitar player, I master the guitar. I'm not fighting it, I master it. God can't be mastered. God is the master. He cannot be mastered. No thought can grasp him. So, physical can grasp him. But even a thought can't. And that's why Chachma is still comfortable enough for Hashem. Because it can't be mastered. It's a thought, but it's not masterable. Chachma is not. It's there for every Jew. Even women and fools. Well, those are your choices. You could be a woman or you could be a fool. They simply have amunah in Hashem. Because amunah is not about some information that you convinced me. Can you convince me to believe in God is a contradiction. I can't convince you to believe something. There are two separate skills, belief and knowledge. As King Solomon says, a fool believes all things. Why is he a fool? Because things can be known. But Hashem is not a thing, and therefore it is appropriate to believe in Hashem. Amunah is appropriate for Hashem. It's not appropriate for how technology works. We start off that way, and then we learn how to operate it. When it comes to Hashem, since Hashem is not a thing, and fools believe in things, that is, they're foolish if they believe in things. Now, what that also means they put their trust in things, whether it's government, or it's the university, or it's the industry, or it's business, or it's military. We put our belief in things, and they will betray us. Because things are limited. The Gemara says that the Mashiach will come when all governments are corrupt. So everybody snickers. It's not the government's problem. It's our problem. We, as a society, put our faith in them. They should fix it, right? Again, at the highest level, there's still people trying their best. And we have, as a society, I'm saying, transferred our intuitive desire for belief in Hashem onto our belief in government, university, industry, whatever it is. That's where our belief has gone. So when it comes to Hashem, it's appropriate to be, quote, believing, piti. Piti translates as foolish, not foolish that you do stupid things, but that you recognize that God is infinite and cannot be grasped. As it says, we are empty and unknowing, and we are like animals with him, and therefore we are constantly with him. Because when I think it's about my understanding, so tomorrow I understand it differently, my relationship changes. No different than saying I love my child because of what they do. Because tomorrow they'll do something else, and then you're going to love them differently. Your love for your child is not shaped by their performance. It is innate, and that's the message here. The fact that I am not nuancing it out from academia is why I am constantly with Hashem. And again, back to the guy who's saying, well, Rabbi, this doesn't work for me. This works for you because you're an academic. Moisrim nafshem akdusas Hashem al haroiv, v'soivlim miyunim koshim, shalichvar b'Hashem echad, v'af im heim burim v'amei aretz v'inyedim gdulus Hashem. And here's where the Alter Rebbe illustrates this point of Mesiras Nefesh, that a person will not give up their relationship with Hashem, not because he loves it, not because it's the most fun, not because he's skilled and knowledgeable, and so on and so forth. Now, the Alter Rebbe acknowledges most of the time. But even so, again, our rule of thumb, nobody, unless they're a psychopath, consciously violates God's will. They make an excuse and a justification, and everybody does it, and it's not so bad, and I'll do tshuva tomorrow. And even in the moment, the person says, no, it's because I learned about the importance of it. In that moment, it's sort of like the Parsha, when Avraham Avinu has the bris, at that moment, all the data is not going to help him. When the person is, God forbid, put in a position of genuine Mesiras Nefesh, in that exact moment, it's not the data that makes it less horrific. So at that moment, it is this pure level that is not the product of academics. And again, the academics are valuable when they develop our natural sense. So if your child says, why do you love me? You say, well, I just love you because you're my kid. That's beautiful. And then if you say, and I love that you do this, that, and the other thing, now it has nuance and character. He has Mesiras Nefesh for no reason. And I've told you the story before. This professor from Yale, John Rausch, wrote a book about why America would be better off if they returned to their Christian roots. And they asked him, what's his personal situation? He's an atheist. His living arrangement is in violation of Torah. So they said to him, well, why don't you become a Christian? He wrote a whole book about why being Christian is better societally, familially, business-wise, culturally. Why don't you become a Christian? And he answered them, because I'm Jewish. What kind of stupid question is that? Now, what does that mean? He doesn't live his life as that kind. Because he understands intuitively, I'm Jewish. What kind of stupid question is that? Why do I become a Christian? Right? There's not a rational explanation. It doesn't make any sense. He's just written a whole book. And he's going on a book tour about why the world would be better off being an alliance with their Christian origin. And when they ask him, well, I'm Jewish. That's exactly this point. And because the infinity of Hashem enters, the portal of entry is through the Chachma, that willingness to go beyond myself, that total bittul, that total surrender to the infinity of Hashem. And as a consequence thereof, it makes its way all the way down. What happens? It gets cluttered with mishigas. It gets cluttered with all kinds of other issues and troubles and whatever it is. And what do we need to do is reawaken it. We need to re-stimulate it. which begins with knowing that it's there, because the guy's coming to the Alter Rebbe saying it's not there, and he's telling it is there. Even if you are the lowest, most crass, insensitive, desensitized, vile person who's ever lived, it's still there. It's just buried under layer and layer of corrosion of this engagement. And again, what we're going to speak about now for the next through chapter 26 is, okay, so how do I access it? How do I stimulate it? It's there, but how do I get it going? Okay, we're going to come up with tactics for how we're going to get it. But the premise is it is there. So it's, excuse me, are you Jewish? Yes. You want to do a mitzvah. That's what you want. It's not a question if you want to. You do want to. Now, will you do it? Will you activate it? And if you don't, stop blaming everybody else. Okay. Have a good week, everybody.